Welcome. My name is William Messakar. I am a master model railroader in the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. I want to welcome all of you to the virtual layout tour we'll have presented today by members of the NMRA. We would encourage you to find out about the NMRA and join in order to participate in these virtual tours. We have other virtual clinics and other activities for the National Model Railroad Association that we think you'll find a big help to your modeling, and you'll get to meet model railroaders just like you. So welcome to our tour, and I hope you enjoy it.
I'm Dale Kreutzer, over here in Port Orchard. I'll share a little bit about the layout, and we'll just get started. Yeah, I call this the Forgotten District of the Rio Grande Southern, and I'll get into that as we go along. So why the RGS 2nd District? This is what I model. The majority of the RGS layouts model the Northern 1st District, and I can certainly understand it's got terrific trestles and mountains, and it's very spectacular. But I like the 2nd District because I want to do something a little different. And the operating potential, as it turned out, the more I dug into it, the more varied and actually more activity than the 1st District. I love the wide open spaces. If you've been to Southwest Colorado, you get up there in Hay Camp Mesa and you're looking out and you can see for miles, as compared to Western Washington, where I can see about 30 feet outside the window. It had high passes, steep grades, similar to the North District, probably not quite as many, but still quite interesting. And researching the Southern District was a lot of fun. At the time I got started on this, there wasn't a tremendous amount, certainly not as much as the Northern. So the prototype in Southwest Colorado, when I say prototype, I'm going to talk about the 2nd District. And the 2nd District ran between Rico and Durango. And the 1st District was, Ridgeway to Rico. Rico was originally the dividing point here in the layout. And they had a small yard and 6-stall engine house, not a roundhouse, but an engine house. But as the years went by, there was less traffic between Delores and Rico, and Delores became much more of an engine for the south area, and there's a lot of things going on here. So this is the part I modeled from Delores to Durango, actually West Durango, which was a small terminal built around 1930, a little bit out of my era, but I needed something of an engine facility. It had light rail until 1928. 30-pound, 40-pound rail, and it wasn't until 1928 that they replaced a lot of the main line with 52-pound rail, which allowed them to bring the bigger Mikados, the 282 K27s. There's coal mine complexes, Perrins Peak, Porter, Ute, Hesperus. Coal was a big driver down in the south area. And then, in fact, until recently, there was coal mining near Hesperus. I think it's the King Coal Mine. Or shipped from the Mayday branch. You can look over here and you can see Mayday Junction coming off near Hesperus. And multiple lumber shipping points. Sawmills popped up and disappeared all along this section, primarily between Delores and Hesperus, this area here. So there was just a lot going on, and agricultural products. Probably the pinto bean capital of the world was Delores. And they also shipped fruit, hay, grain, cattle, sheep, hogs. So there was a lot going on. So let's get started. We'll talk about the layout itself. So the layout specifics, SN3, layout size is 42 long, 11.5 to 16 feet wide. It's L girder construction, probably would be difficult to move. Initially I thought about doing it modular, but as I got going along, I just kind of strayed away from that. The height is 49 to 60 inches, Mayday being the highest point. The photo backdrops are custom backdrops that photos that I took, panoramic photos that were as close to the real site as I could get them. And if I couldn't, I looked for a spot that had the same characteristics. It's NCE DCC wireless. The locomotives are consolidations, 10-wheelers, Macados. They're all equipped with Soundtrack Tsunami 2s. The era is the 1920s. Originally, I wanted to do the early 20s, but realized I wouldn't live long enough to scratch build all the cars that I needed. So ended up moving it more toward like 1925 to 1930, 1929, in that era. Maximum grade, 3% in the main, 4% in the branches. The tracks hand laid. Main line is 191 feet. Main line and sidings are code 55 rail, and spurs and branches are code 40. Roadbed is typically just humused on plywood. So here's a diagram of the layout, drawn by my good friend Bill Atkins, who's very good with Third Planet, thankfully. And basically, you've got staging here with the Rio Durango staging towns. You're coming out of West Durango, you're heading northbound, Delores is southbound. Typically, SEMA Summit is the meeting place for the freights. So they work their way through the layout. So the entrance is here, and we'll get busy and we'll start taking a look. So as you walk in the entrance, this is what you'll see. And what we're going to do is we're just going to walk back, and we'll start at staging. So staging is down around the corner, down this way. Okay, staging. It's under the stairs, limited to 3 tracks in each staging town. I would have liked to have had a better staging area, but, well, let me put it this way. I lost that argument. The family room is still the family room. Exiting Rico, trains are southbound. The maximum length for each track is 9 cars. If a longer train needs to leave there, it's just doubled up, and you just have to put the train together. Northbound, each track's 11 cars. So from Durango, it's northbound. So from staging, this is what you're going to see. Delores is on the left. West Durango is on the right. So we're going to work our way from Delores southbound. I'd like to point out that these steps are really handy that you see down here. They actually interlock. You can stack them. John Walters up in Polsbo, he designed and made them. And they interlock so they don't move around. They really work good. So we're going to head southbound. Delores is probably the biggest town. It is the biggest town on the layout and has the most activity. The real life Delores, like I said, had a lot going on. Number of warehouses, shipping agricultural products, and of course, taking in merchandise, machinery, and things like that. So we're coming out of staging. Down here in the lower left, you'll see a little diagram. And so from Delores, we're going to head around this way over toward the Glencoe and Haycamp Mesa area. As you notice, Delores, the scenery's not done yet. Neither is it done at Glencoe. It's just hard shell. Doing this layout, I did everything so I built all the bench work and then did all the track work and then did all the hard shell and then I've gone back to do the individual scenes. And one of the reasons I did it that way is because I wanted to make sure that the track design was proper, and if I needed to make any adjustments, I wasn't tearing up scenery. I just don't want to do things twice. In fact, you can see here, I had to make a change here, and I can get into that maybe later. So anyway, we have a sawmill, Morrison Mill up here in the mesa, and you have a switchback that goes up to it. So once you leave there, you come into the town of Mancos. Mancos, of course, is the second largest town on the layout. It was kind of that way on the real railroad as well. Mancos, very agricultural town, valley. Some of you may be familiar with Mancos. It's the town that's closest to the cliff dwellers, the national park, the Mesa Verde National Park. So here's an overview. It's in an alcove here, and you can see it kind of just curves around. It's a little bit difficult to photograph because of its location. So we're going to be departing Mancos here. So if we follow the diagram, we're going to continue southbound. We're going to go along the East Mancos River and into Menifee. And once we go through Menifee, then we're going to be climbing up, picking up water at East Mancos Tank, and climbing up to the SEMA summit where there's usually a meet. This is a view looking, Mancos will be on your left out of the picture. And so you're going to come through these trees here where the East Mancos River is under the trestles, and into Menifee, and here you have the sawmill, and then you're going to come around and come up, pick up water at East Mancos Tank, and then cross the trestles heading up to SEMA Summit. SEMA Summit's here. The Mayday branch comes up a little higher, and you end up switching some cars way up here at the top, and then of course over on the right is Hesperus. So here we're meeting the Mancos turn, which is doing some switching at the mill. And there's the sawmill. I call it the Sire Mill after Armin Sire, who built the scratch built the sawmill. And now we're heading up East Mancos to the tank. I mean, East Mancos was really just a location on the railroad where there was a water tank and some section buildings. But other than that, there was never any town there or anything like that. Okay, now we're finished taking on water. We're crossing the East Mancos trestle. And we got number 20 pushing on the back. The RGS did not care whether the locomotive was in front of or in back of the caboose. And here we got 20 pushing on 3% climb to SEMA Summit. This is where you usually have a meet up at SEMA Summit. Northbound has right away, has rights over the southbound. So we're at this location here in SEMA Summit. Here, if you look at the lower right here, the diagram. So the helper's cut off and heads downgrade, and then it's here taking on water at the Hesperus tank. And here we see the Mancos turn returning, coming through Hesperus. So we came down grade, we came into Hesperus. Yeah, Hesperus is it's the third largest. It's not as much activity, obviously, as the other two towns, but it does have a very active coal mine. And here we see the Hesperus Coal Company. So from Hesperus, so we're heading down to Porter. And again, we're getting Porter and the Wildcat section, Wildcat Canyon are not finished. Obviously, the hard shell is in, but that ends up usually being very modified. But this is a big driver of shipping on the railroad, with the coal. So from Porter, we're going to go around Bend, and then we're going to be heading across Lightner Creek, Trestle, and then into West Durango. So once we come around the bend, there's Lightner Creek and Trestle. You have the Twin Buttes here in the background, and down to West Durango, and then here on the right, this is where the staging is. It's not, it's not big, but it's turned out to be adequate. It works. And the photographer caught the extra 40 crossing the trestle shortly after it was built. And here's the West Durango terminal. I don't have a turntable on the layout. I have 3 Ys, and that's how the locomotives are turned. There's a Y in Delores, one in Mancos, and one at Hesperus. So I thought I'd put the diagram up against you to kind of pull it together for you. I'm kind of going through this kind of quickly, obviously. So basically we went from Delores, we went around Hay Camp Mesa, into Mancos, and then into Menifee, heading upgrade to SEMA Summit. And then we're heading back, downgrade into Hesperus. Ute Junction has a coal facility taken on coal. It's called Ute Junction because at one time there was a branch that went up to a coal mine, which was quite extensive, even had a turntable up there. And it was very prosperous until the federal government figured out that the people who built it had been mining federal coal for 20 years. The owners disappeared, never caught. So then down Porter, and then of course down back into staging. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about operations. I love seeing the layout come to life. I think that's, I don't know if I'd have a layout if I couldn't see it come to life with the trains running and people operating it. So it's become a big part of what I like to do. Here you see some of the crew: Robin Peel, Bill Wasaka, Bruce Hanley. In operations, providing structure. Operating sections have to have a structure. Well, I know that there's small layouts that only run extras and it works for them. But when you start getting into a larger layout, I think you have to have some kind of, you have to control things, whether it's timetable, train or warrants, you have to have something. Fast clock. It's important. Communications, they have the way to communicate between the operators and the dispatcher. Car management system. A lot of people use car cards, a lot use computer generated systems. I personally use Ship It. Forms. Railroads led lots of forms. And of course, you have to have tools for the operators, to help them do their job. So we're talking timetable. This is the timetable developed for the layout. And it gives all the information you need. If it's a bold time, there's a meet. Other information's been added just to give it more of a prototypical look. You've got the telegraph, the signs for each individual station, and whether if it's a day and night, if it's open day and night, or if it's just a telegraph box. Obviously, that's just for to make it feel more prototypical. And typically here we have southbound, we've got 3 trains basically each way. And the asterisk ones are ones that I can annul to make the session shorter. The turns, obviously we got the SEMA turn, the Mancos turn, and the Delores Hay Camp turn. And all 3 keep a person busy the whole time. And typically, I like to have 7 people to operate. 9 works well because I can double up people on the freights. A graph is very helpful in developing your system. This particular graph is produced out of Ship It. Dispatcher sheet. This is, I just did this in Microsoft Word. And again, just copied an original sheet. And this one, it's about 14 by 24. 14 inches by 24 long. Fast clocks. And I use a fast clock called an FCC4 fast clock controller. If you do a search on FCC4 fast clock controller, the website will come up. It's a guy out of the East Coast. What I really liked about it, I can adjust it. I can do fine adjustments. Originally, I used to have it at 6:1. And it was really kind of fast. People felt pressured. So slowly I brought it down. I think I got it about 4.5 to 1 or 4 3/4 to 1 or something like that. But it's a very, very nice system. And you want to put the clocks where people can see them. So this clock here, you can see it from Hesperus and Menifee and the Mayday area, and even Mancos. This clock, it can be seen from Mancos and Porter. And then around the bend, there's one that can be seen from Delores. Communications. dispatcher can contact these 7 different stations. When he just pushes the momentary switch down, it'll buzz once and the LED will flash until an operator picks up the phone. And it's, it's a party line kind of thing. So car management, ship it does the moves for me, and then I export the moves, and I cut and paste them into my own switch list. I enjoy doing this. It's a little more work, takes an evening or 2 to put together a session, but I enjoy it. And I find that, I don't know, you can see, there you go. That's the size of it. Fits right in your hand. It's kind of nice. And then if you turn over in the back, you've got the schedule. And then also if you have questions about what train it is you got and what you got to do, the information's there. And then the primary towns have basically a yard arrival and departure list. I call it a house track arrival departure list. Forms, clearance card, Form 19's, message. These are the 3 forms that are used the most on the layout. Operator tools. One of the things I did during this pandemic is I revised all the town fascias so that the setup is as similar to each other as possible, where you have places you can clip your switch list. And here's where the house track information is. Each town has a diagram, and the reason it's done in this sleeve thing with a screw is that way you can pick it up off the bottom and just tilt it up to look at it if you need to look at it. And just another picture that shows it, and this one includes the phone. And if the dispatcher needs to send out Form 19s, you can clip it. Where'd that go? Okay, clip it to this. This just shows you. This is another Microsoft Word. Other ops tools. The locomotive functions. I have them taped on the back of the cabs, the NCE cab 06s. And over here you've got a call board. On the fascia where you throw the switches, I have it color coded, the main line being the dark background, the diverging track. Here you can see this, and then any industries that are on that track in the order they appear on that track, I put it there. And I try to keep the dispatcher organized. It's tough, but I try. We got an organizer here. So the players, dispatcher. You can see here's the dispatch station. It's in a different room from the layout. It's Robin. And here you got Russ and Steve Flanagan trying to figure out something. Since this photo was taken, I've gone to the other switch list, which is easier to manage. Here you got Dave Woodrell running the Mancos turn. Here's Glenn Farley. He was doing the Delores hay camp up there switching the Morrison Mill. And Fred Hamilton. He's calling into the dispatcher, telling the dispatcher, yes, I am at Hesperus. What do you mean you don't believe me? No, I'm just kidding, of course. Future projects. I'm currently working on the Ute Junction coal pocket shed. The Porter Mine Complex is going to be a big one. Bridge 102A is a double pony how through truss bridge coming out of Delores. Obviously scenery, and the layout needs more detail. I haven't worried too much about detail. I wanted to get the layout to more an overall look. So, questions?
Thank you, Dale. We had a question about your aisle width and if what they are, and if you have any regrets about that if you were to build it again.
Well, it varies. I try to keep it wider where the towns are, and they can be, up to, like 3 feet. It varies. The choke points are down to maybe 2 feet, but I tried to keep it so where they were just a choke point. So you didn't have a long aisle with a narrow width. I might even have, I think I've got one choke point there at Hesperus where the Y sticks out. That is about 20. But I mean, it's an easy thing to just slide right through, and people don't run into each other. You don't get in each other's way. Porter's tight. That's the tightest spot in the layout. That happened because I ended up adding passing sidings there. I originally didn't design it that way, and then realized after running some trains that it needed sidings, so that made that aisle narrower.
Dan Kellogg asks, can you describe the process for development of your excellent backdrops?
Sure. Basically, I go out on site and, took panoramic shots and then use Photoshop to merge them together. I had to use I had to merge them together. And then, of course, there was a lot of cloning. You had to take out the modern stuff, the 1975 junk Plymouth sitting in somebody's yard, or field. And then a friend, Dave Wick, is a professional photographer and cameraman, and he has helped me with the printing. He does the printing, and it's continuous print. So like the Delores backdrop, that's 39 feet. That was the last backdrop I did. It was 39 feet, continuous print. Once it was all trimmed out, it was put up using wallpaper paste. That's the type of paper. I have a whole presentation on how to do that.
So that long continuous print was a single document that you created in Photoshop?
Yes. Yeah, it ends up being quite big in megabytes.
Another question, how long have you been in the hobby and how long have you been working on this layout?
I got in the hobby about 1980. I was looking for a hobby and living in Hawaii at the time, and found a train shop called The Right Track that a guy by the name of Hatch had. And Hatcher, not to be confused with Steve Hatcher. I just got interested and started out with a little bit of standard gauge, HO, and then discovered narrow gauge. Eventually got into SN3 in the mid 80s, dabbled with ON3 in the early 90s, and then went back to SN3. This layout, the first construction was probably in around 97, 98. Bench work was completed in 1999. It's been a long process. I guess maybe I'm slow, but it's been a long time.
Dale, do you retype the ship it list in order to add more detail, or do you do that with your own computer program?
Well, it depends on what it is, the detail is. For example, when I have the tonnage, I'll have, like, if it's a LCL load, maybe it's the total tonnage of the car is 13 tons. It'll just say, 13T. It'd be LCL-13T. And that's that. I put that in. That's in Ship It. As far as calculating the tonnage, I do that myself. The template is something I put together.
Do you have a picture handy of the bridge or the duck under in the entryway to the room, or can you say a little more about that?
It's about 54, I think it's about 54 inches off the ground. And I'd have to look for a picture. I don't have one yet.
Okay, and how wide is it approximately?
Only about 3 to 4 inches wide.
No, I mean long.
Long. That's about the width of a doorway. So what's a doorway? 30 inches, 32 inches, something like that.
And do you keep it up for the entire operating session, or do you let people?
Oh, no. It's a permanent duck under.
Okay.
High enough that I don't know, if anybody really has a problem getting under it. Although I did pad it after knocking myself on my can one day.
Do you have that picture of the coal pocket under construction? You want to just show us that briefly?
Sure.
Dale,
yeah.
Can you direct us to where we would find reference material on how these trestles in real life were actually constructed? I've always wanted to know how they fastened the main vents into the foundation and things like that.
There is actually a good website. It's on RGS Research, and it's got really good diagrams and exactly how they put the trestles together. What's really interesting about the Rio Grande Southern is you don't find bolts and stuff on the trestles. They use long nails to put these things together. So this is the current project. This structure was built by Bill Atkins, who wanted the Rico one instead of the Vance Junction one. And so we did a swap, and I got it beautifully constructed pockets. And in real life, up until 1923, there was this large shed, and the track was in the back here, and they shoveled the coal into the shed and then into the pockets. So scratch building this, it's come along since this photo was taken, but it's been an interesting one. Dave Woodrell is really, I call him the mayor of Delores, because he's built most of the structures here in Delores, with the exception of the station, which was built by Fred Hamilton. Doing a layout, especially this one, I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for people who like to do things like build structures and help out and stuff. There's many that have helped me over the years. So that was J.J. Harris. This is Warehouse 5. This is a scratch-built warehouse that Dave recently completed. It's a collaborative effort, because I like to do the historical research, and I'll do the drawings, and then he'll do the structure. I just completed the stock pens for Delores. That's a recent one. The Porter Coal Mine Complex. That's going to be a big one. That's a future. I had to widen the bench work to put the J.J. Harris warehouse in. I redid the locomotive storage area for Delores so we could put more locomotives there, since I don't have an engine terminal on that end of the layout. The Glencoe siding. And this was interesting because I did not redo this with plywood and Homosote. What I used was a heavy-duty spackle, because it's supported on the bottom with foam, and then redid this and then carved it to the right shape. Left the old one and just left it with old ties thrown out, rails thrown out, that kind of thing. The backdrop, Delores, this is recently gotten up. Wildcat Canyon, this is foam, it's hand carved. Once the dirt and all that and the vegetation gets on it, it'll knock down. It won't look, quite as in your face as it does now. Oh, that's it.
How are you controlling your turnouts?
Servos. Originally they were Switchmaster, but I've been converting them all to servos.
When you were a kid, were there any railroads nearby?
Well, early on, my early years were spent in Maryland and Hampstead, Maryland. I think the Western Maryland ran through there, and I seem to remember early on steam whistles, but I grew up mostly around Buffalo, New York, which was a big railroad hub.
Well, Dale, I think I can speak for all of us. What I recently learned from Robin, that we are gobsmacked. That was excellent.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I think what Dale failed to mention, talking about his layout, it looks lovely. It operates almost with perfection, so derailment is incredibly rare, so it runs as well as it looks. So that's a tantamount to the miles of hand-laid track and switches, so it really does run very well.
Oh, thank you, Robin.
Hello again. This is another reminder that this virtual layout tour has been brought to you by members of the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. And we hope you've enjoyed it. And we want to encourage you to, again, find out about the NMRA online. Both PNR and NMRA have an excellent website where you can get information about joining and participating in this and other activities like our clinics that are held all over the region. So thank you for joining us today and wish you great modeling.